Hello chess friends, and welcome to the Art of Chess channel, and welcome to a new season of the TCEC competitions. Welcome to the TCEC season 22. So finally we have a new TCEC event, because in my opinion the TCEC events are so great. They're even much better, I think, than this computer chess championships that we can also follow. They're also great, but I like more the TCEC events because the prearranged lines on the TCEC events are much better. They're more equalish. On the other hand, on the computer chess championships, the prearranged lines, I think, are in favor simply too much for one particular engine. The prearranged lines gives always a +1 evaluation, at least a +1 evaluation for one particular engine, and then of course a brutal engine like Stockfish Dragon engine or Lila C0 engine is simply destroying these other engines in an early stage of the game. They're having no chances to get back into the game, so that's why I like more the slow down pace games, which are really more equalish, which are, I think, even understandable more and more, because the prearranged lines are also very often played in top grandmaster level, so they're more often played than this dubious lines on the computer chess champions. So that's why I really liked always more the TCEC competitions than the computer chess championships. I think you can agree with me, because we want to see, of course, the best lines. We want to see the best preparations that you want to see in particular openings. So that's why I think the TCEC is a very important competition. So what also is now cool about this new season of the TCEC event is that the Dragon engine is in the lead. Really wild stuff. It was recently always a pure domination by the Stockfish engine, but now the Dragon engine is in the lead. Really incredible performance, and also congratulations, of course, to developers of this very beautiful chess engine, because we need, of course, also a competitor. It's not always fun to watch when always Stockfish is winning. We need also someone that can be a rival for the Stockfish engine. So let's check out now one great game by the leader, by the Dragon engine. It is the Dragon versus Eagle in the modern defense, and here the Dragon engine will launch a beautiful 150 attack. I've promised you that I will cover more and more of this 150 attack and how to explain better the 150 attack. Of course, we want to see what the top engines are playing in particular sidelines. So let's check out now the game. So here d4 played by the Dragon engine. We have d6 by Eagle. We have e4, we have of course g6, simply developing the dark square bishop, and now after move knight to c3, bishop to g7, bishop to e3, preparing queen to d2, f3, h4, and similar stuff. On the other hand, black is preparing also some ideas of a queenside attack, c6, b5, and if black gets challenge too early with h4 h5, don't get surprised if your opponent's king stays in the king in the center, with the king in the center. It's sometimes a beautiful strategic element for black. So as I said, don't be surprised if your opponent is not getting into your attack, or maybe in some occasions you can also expect your opponent to castle queenside. I think if you're playing the game as white, you should be really familiar with these ideas, because it happened to me many times that I launched an early flank attack with f3, h4, h5, and then my opponent simply castled out of the attack, and then he had a huge dominant position here on the queen side. So the flexibility that many times black can get in the modern or / perch defense is great. That's why this is still a popular opening these days, and as I said, the engine doesn't give here immediately a huge advantage for white. So we after move bishop to e3, we have a6 preparing now finally b5 here by black. We have queen to d2, b5, and now h4 immediately. So you see, although black and white didn't castle so far, so still white is going to probably castle on the queen side, and black is still going to probably castle king side. You see, both of these engines are launching immediately their flank attack. That was always beautiful strategy to watch also for white and for black. Now both engines are waiting one particular engine just to go into the attack. So here after move h4, we have now h5. This engine Eagle, of course, prevents some further expansions on the king side, because then h5 would be a serious positional threat here by white. So we have now queenside castling, finally getting this idea, and now we have knight to d7. The problem, I think, in this particular scenario is that you don't want to play knight to h3. as we said, you want to play probably f3, and then you want to play knight to g5. f3 is the main goal here, always in these positions, because then you want to open the position further with the move g4. But now, if you play knight to f3, then of course you lose some tempi, because you have already taken the square with your knight, so then you cannot play f3 anymore. So that's why many times white is playing the move knight to h3. But knight to h3, I think, would lead into this line, bishop to h3. So many times black is giving up the light square bishop immediately for the knight, and then after rook to h3, you see, you don't want to of course take with the pawn, because then you don't have again this idea to push the pawn on g4. But now after move rook to h3, I think in the near future white would lose again too much time or too many tempi just in order to push the pawn on g4. You have to play something like, I don't know, rook to h1, rook to g1, and then g4. Although again, white is probably slightly better in this position, it doesn't matter, but I think from this point on black could have a really comfortable game. Then knight to f6 castling, and then maybe c5 would be the breakthrough idea here with the support of the dark square bishop. Then black could have also some beautiful attacking chances. So that's why here queenside castling was played by this engine dragon, because if you play now bishop to b7 or something, then we want to play knight to h3, knight to g4. Now we don't have this threat that our opponent would take out the knight. So as I said, it's not a problem if he takes your knight on h3, but I think that's sort of a line that black is hoping for, and black is playing this line very, very often in the modern FET. So here we have knight to d7. Now of course this diagonal is covered, so that's why here now the dragon engine plays the move knight to h3. We have bishop to b7, now knight to g5, preparing finally f3 g4, and now e6. This e6 is very often a flexible idea. What I mean about the flexibility of this move is that basically black is waiting here. As we said in the beginning of the video, black can sometimes, not every times, but sometimes can stay with the king in the center and hopes for that you suddenly, I don't know, push a pawn, like for instance this move d5, then with the flexibility of these two pawns he'll simply pass through with the move e5. Even if you do the same with the move e5, then he will simply push the pawn here on d5, and finally the center would be locked, and now the king would in the center would not be endangered anymore. Now in the continuation, finally c5, c4, b4, you have already castle, so black will make here some kind of a progress, and I think black could have really a comfortable game. So that's why you should be careful here. In the continuation, f3 was played by the dragon engine, hoping for g4 again, and then finally h5. So we have here knight to f6, we have queen to f2. This is really beautiful move by dragon engine. I always wondered, what should I do here? I've reached this position many times, and I played this queen to f2 move not so often. I played similar different ideas. I played sorry, let's go back, knight to f6. I played always something like bishop to e2. I was always hoping for to get some kind of an attack with the move g4, but as I said, black doesn't have to castle into the attack. Black can also play queen to e7 and even queenside castling. So that's why I was never really satisfied with this approach with the move bishop to e2. Now with the move queen to f2, I think it would be very risky for black here to castle queenside, because you have perfect battery, and the problem is now that the c5 move is not working, because you have here really beautiful d takes c5, then of course d takes c5, bishop to c5, and you see now we have a beautiful attack on the d file. When the queen is not on the d file, then of course black would not mind to trade off knight to d5, queen takes d8, rook takes d8, rook takes d8, and similar stuff. So after a couple of trades of pieces, this tactic is not working. So that's why here, as I said, queen to f2, getting out of the range of the d file, because now the rook is here. Really beautiful idea, and also preventing here black from queenside castling. That's why here after move queen to f2, queen to e7, being flexible again, queenside castling, kingside castling is an opportunity, but now king to b1. If you play here b4 too early, it doesn't change the position. I think knight to e2, knight to f4 is going to happen, g4 is still an option. So basically this b4 move would simply help out the knight from this square. The knight is even better placed here, it controls further the center of the board. So after move king to b1, we have rook to c8, we have bishop to c1, and finally kingside castling. And this is now sort of a trigger for everyone that is playing the 150 attack against the perch defense. Kingside castling is leading now to immediately beautiful attack here for white. So that's why here immediately g4. So that's the move that basically white is waiting for black to castle on the king side. So if I think here a slightly better idea is to play knight to b6, staying a little bit more with the king in the center, then maybe try to launch this c5 idea, then maybe c4, b4. This would be, I think, much better, because as we said, if white pushes the pawn on d5, then e5. If white pushes the pawn on e5, then black is going to pass through with the move d5. So the center cannot be opened very easily here by white. So that's why staying with the king in the center was much better, I think, here for black. Instead of that, black simply castled, and from this point on, it was a one-way ticket. Here, the dragon engine immediately attacks, because now comes the problem. If you try h takes g4, if you play now this move, it's not working here for black, because you will play simply h5, and whatever you do, for instance, if you play knight to h5, then you get f takes g4, you have to again move the knight, and with queen to h2 you lose the battle on the h file. So finally, although white can even sacrifice some pawns here, but the most important thing is now to open the files in front of black's king. So what you could also do, maybe here after move h5, you could try g takes h5, but it doesn't get better. Even if you try this one, f takes g4, even if you try knight to g4, then of course queen to h4 and similar stuff are working, then you lose probably this pawn. Bishop to e2 will happen, will take out also this pawn, so it's again game over. So even if you try here something like g3, maybe to pass through, to somehow lock this file, will simply take, and even after knight to h5, I think this common rook sacrifice is always working. Rook to h5, g takes h5, and you see now the g file is open, the bishop to d3, rook to h1 will happen, will take out this one. So I think it's a completely tactical loss game here for black. So that's why g4, you have to, I think, know this tactic when you're attacking the fianchetto. You should really sacrifice some pawns here, and even a rook sacrifice we have seen is possible. So don't be so scared. Attack your opponent's fianchetto, because the main goal is not to now count pawns, it's not to count material. The most important thing is here to open files, open diagonals against your opponent's king. So here g4, perfect move. So we have now c5 by this engine Eagle, but it's not working, because now finally d5 here, the dragon engine sacrifices against some pawns. Okay, we have b4, not a problem, knight to e2, and now after e takes d5, now comes knight to f4. Really beautiful maneuver, really great positional and tactical chess here by the dragon engine, because now we're attacking further the h5. Now after g takes h5, knight to h5, knight to h5, g takes h5, but again the pawn structure would be messed up, the g file will get open. So now Stockfish, the dragon engine is simply challenging here the h5 square further, which is now the main target of white. So we have here d takes e4, but now, as we said, this is now the most beautiful idea. Here g takes h5, we have e3, trying to keep somehow the files locked, and we have bishop to e3, now knight to h5, knight to h5, g takes h5, and after rook to g1, we can agree that this is a perfect attacking position. The g file is opened. Not only that the g file is opened, we have also this advanced h5 pawn. So it's also a weakness. We have here some weaknesses on light squares. The h5 is weak, g file is very dangerous. Bishop to d3 will happen in particular continuation of the game. We can also create some batteries. The queen can be included in this game. Knight on g5, very active. So it's almost a completely losing game here for black. We're now in move 21, and the modern defense is really destroyed. Really wild stuff. So here we have knight to e5, queen to g3, king to h8, and now bishop to e2 with ideas of f4, then bishop to h5. We have a rook to e8, but now bishop to c1. Here there were maybe some discoveries. Both of these pieces were on the same file. Of course, bishop to c1 is not losing any activity for the bishop. Still, this bishop is very active on this diagonal, although it retreated on a slightly passive square on c1, but still it controls some good attacking squares on the king side. So after move f5 was played, we have knight to h3, really beautiful move. Knight to f4 now with knight to h5 is the serious threat. We have bishop to bishop to f6, and now knight to f4. Even if you take here bishop to h4, queen to h3 is going to happen. You have to step back with the bishop. Rook to h1, h5 will be taken. So as I said, this is not really time to be greedy here. Even if you take a pawn, it doesn't matter. You have just opened further the position in front of your king. So that's why taking out the pawn here on h4 is really not an option for black. So after move knight to f4, we have rook to g8, queen to h3, rook takes g1, rook takes g1, queen to h7, controlling now the h5 square. Of course, we have a rook to d1, attacking also the d6. So many weaknesses we can agree here in black's camp. f5, h5, g6, f7, all of these squares are weaknesses. Also the pawns are weak, the d6 backward pawn is weak, so these are really clear targets for white. So after move knight to f7 was played, we have bishop to d3 attacking the f5, we have a bishop to c8, queen to f1 attacking now this one. This is also weakness, so you see how weak this position is by black. We have bishop to d4, and now finally the dragon engine gets its pawn back. We have knight to e5, bishop to c8, rook to c8, and now knight to e2, finally attacking the bishop on d4. So we have now queen to a7, knight takes d4, and after c takes d4, okay, this is now a very powerful knight in the center of the board, but the cool part about this position is that the knight will not stay there forever. Still, this knight can be kicked away with the potential f4 move, then queen to d3. This one is attacked, and maybe f5, d6. So again, too much weakness. So we have here b3, and the only way maybe to make some kind of a mess here is to play rook to a8, but it doesn't even matter. You can play simply bishop to b2. You can maybe create one check, but now after king to c1, okay, you had your fun with one check, but from this point on, black doesn't have any more attacking chances. This pawn will be taken, this pawn will be taken, the queen, as we said, will come into the game. So too much activity here for black. So after move b3, we have king to h7, we have bishop to queen to g2, d3, c takes d3. Here the dragon engine probably got a little bit challenged on the c file, but actually this is again the only square that maybe is vulnerable here in white's position. All the other squares are perfectly fine. Here in the continuation, we had now this idea: queen to g7, queen to d2, we have rook to c7, and after queen to b4, we had now queen to b2, queen to g2. But now really beautiful tactic here. Bishop queen takes d6 here played by the dragon engine. If you play something like queen to c2, that was now the continuation. We have king to a1. The problem is now you cannot take actually the rook on d1 because it doesn't come with a check. Now white also takes out this rook and has now a comfortable game with this two connected pass pawns on the queen side. So here after move queen to c2, we had king to a1, we have a rook to g7, queen to h6. Now check, look how these pieces are connected here by the dragon engine. Really beautiful setup. We have now king to g8 and now queen to d2, hoping for a trade of queens. That's exactly what happened. After bishop to d2, we have knight to f3, and now bishop to c3, attacking the rook to c7. But now after move king to b2, we have now a new position where white is obviously much better because of, again, these two connected pass pawns. But also here is a pass pawn. The cool part is of course also that the rook is controlling the first rank, and also the bishop is controlling the knight's activity, so the knight cannot come in the center of the board where it controls of course further squares. So it's again, as I said, completely losing game here for black. So we have now knight to h4, a4, f4. Now the dragon engine simply pushed the pawn further. We hit now rook to f4, knight to e3, and now after bishop to d4, again a new attack, rook to f5. Now stockfish. Why I'm saying stockfish all the time, sorry. It seems to me when I'm watching this game that the stockfish engine is playing, because this was really a perfect attack by the dragon engine. So as I said, here the dragon engine played rook to h5, king to g6, now a rook to f4, rook to c5, controlling of course this very important squares. This knight is now out of game. You can maybe take here in the continuation, but even if you take out now the rook, the king is too far away from the action, so this pawns will be promoted. So after move king to c3, we have now knight to f4. So here this eagle engine didn't dare to take the rook, wanted to stay somehow with the pieces on the board and tried really to include somehow the king into the game, but it's simply too late. Here we have rook to c6, king to h5. We have now a5. The problem about this continuation is if you take, then of course the rooks will be traded off, and then this is a distant patch pawn which the knight cannot catch. So it was also a very nice tricky idea here by the dragon engine. We had rook to d7, a6, simply pushing the pawn further. We have now knight to d4, but it doesn't matter. Rook to c5, king to h6, simply pushing the pawn further. We have now b7, rook takes a6, and here after move b8, the promotion in this position, this other engine eagle resigned. Okay, you can maybe try knight to c6, rook to c6, rook to c6, but here this should be winning here for white. Although of course in some occasions if the rook would be closer, then maybe this could be protectable, but now when the rook is too far away from the action, this is a winning endgame here for white. So really beautiful game by the dragon engine. I really liked this maneuver. Let's go back to this really critical moment. So after move d5, here b4, and then knight to e to c. Okay, you took the pawn in the central rule, but now knight to f4. Knight to f4 is finally attacking here the position we want to. As I said in the beginning, we want to open files, open diagonals in front of black's king, and this maneuver allowed it. It controlled now the h5 square, which was a wonderful square in black camp, and from this point on, I think white had a beautiful attack. So okay, this is the way how to attack the fianchetto. Really great stuff by the dragon engine. As I said, it's almost like watching the stockfish engine. So the dragon engine is now in the lead, which will be in the tournament, which will be, I think, much more dynamic tournament than we used to see the others, because I of course admire the stockfish ability, but sometimes it's just boring to watch one engine being on the top all the time. We want to of course have a struggle, we want to have really a battle, we want to have a competition. So maybe it's now a new era, maybe it's now the era of the dragon engine. So okay, I hope that you enjoyed the game. I really enjoyed it a lot. If you want to see more brutal games like this, check out my Comment the Chess Games Played by Computer series with some more games played by Stockfish, Alpha Zero, Lila Zero, and many more. And if you like this content, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. See you soon with some more videos, and chess is the best, of course.